Hey guys, and welcome to the Kurima Podcast, where we talk about business, finance, entrepreneurship, and real estate. I'm your host, Jason Kurima, and I have Tymon Bay joining me today. Tymon, it's a pleasure to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I know you're a lawyer, and then you also are an active real estate investor. So what else do you have going on?
Beyond practicing law and investing in real estate, right now it's, and pretty much all year, every year, it's children's activities. I have 5 children from 9 to 1, and right now we're at the tail end of basketball season. So tonight I think we have one of them has basketball practice, and then another one has a doubleheader tonight. So trying to get through basketball season before we jump right into baseball season. So beyond law and real estate, it's constant children's activities.
Dang. Sounds like it keeps you pretty busy.
Always.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go into your story and out of high school. You're out of high school. What did you do to, I know you went to college because you had to be a lawyer. So kind of give me your story and then where you are today.
Sure. I went from high school in Kabul, Missouri. It's a town of about 2,000 people, to Washington, D.C., where I went to college at the American University and majored in international studies with a minor in U.S. foreign policy, and had career goals that involved that ultimately were changed by a woman, as plans are often changed by beautiful women. I graduated from college in 3 years because I didn't want to pay for a 4th year.
Nice.
So I crammed it all into 3 years and 2 summers. Then law school at Mizzou. That was a 3-year program. And once I graduated from there, I had accepted a job offer in Springfield. So I was a litigator in Springfield for roughly 3 years. And in 2015, I moved to Carthage and started at a general practice there called Checkett & Pauley, a long-standing firm with a good reputation. I learned more about how to practice in the general areas of the law as opposed to the insurance defense litigation that I had been trained in Springfield. Fast forward to 2021, the beginning of 2021, my partner Mary Ann Morgan and I took over the firm, and I've been managing it on the day-to-day basis since the beginning of 2021, and
Nice.
then I find myself here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when did you kind of transition into real estate?
So the actual transition to real estate was in July of 2017, but the process began during law school. In my second year, I started really thinking about how to grow wealth. I hadn't really contemplated it much before that. And without walking you through all of my thoughts and contemplations, I settled on this notion that I needed to get into things that were limited, whatever that looked like. So how could I invest in something that wasn't something available to everyone ad infinitum? So not everybody could get it for free.
Yeah.
Which then, as I went down that process, led me to, well, the good Lord stopped making land a long time ago. That's not to say man doesn't continue to make places for man to live, but real estate is a finite resource. And was taking some real estate law classes, which was, I would say, emphasizing that point that I'd already reached. Got to know what is now one of my best friends, and he's a business partner, and he had reached the same conclusion, which led us to begin researching rentals and real estate in general and investing in real estate. So for 5 or 6 years, we researched and talked to people in the industry, realtors, lawyers, what have you. We waited until 2017 until we finally pulled the trigger. And the regret I have now is that, as I've told you before, is that we waited that long. I'm glad that we were trying to do the research, but at some point you just got to pull the trigger and jump into it.
Yeah. I'm actually the same way. Like, I know I'm younger and everything, but I think everyone that gets into real estate says they wish they would have started sooner. Like, what was I doing in like 5th or 6th grade? I should have been buying houses.
I have been teaching my children for years now about real estate and investing in real estate. I think the first time I really thought I was getting through was my oldest was in first grade, and he had told his teacher that he wanted passive income and not active income. And she asked him what that meant, and he said, well, I want to buy rental properties. And that came back to us, and I was like, yes, okay, I'm doing a good job.
That is awesome.
Now, who knows if he actually ever does it, right? But at least he's understanding what I'm saying to him.
Yeah. And how old did you say?
So my oldest is 9, and then I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
Nice. Man, I'd be really proud. That's awesome.
Yeah, I got 3 boys, and then I have 2 baby girls, and they're feisty. But whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
My 2 girls keep me pretty busy. So
I think if you have even one child, you can understand. If you don't have any children, you don't understand what it's like. But it doesn't matter how many you have. If you have one, at least you understand what all other parents have to go through.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think, in my opinion, once you have the second one, it's hard. Especially for us, it was hard because we had them so close. If we spaced them out a little bit more, I think it would have been a little bit easier. But we had them like one after the other practically. So
yeah, we did. Ours, as you heard, they're all right at about 2 years apart. Yeah, and it's a chore sometimes.
Yeah,
all the time. Actually, what I'm saying, it's all the time. Yeah,
yeah. Okay, so what do you like the most about real estate? Is it the passive income? Is it like, what is it for you?
I think partly it's tangible, right? It's not something I can hold in my hands, but it is something that I can see, I can drive by, I can take pride in its appearance, or I can be disgusted by its appearance and then work to fix it.
Yeah.
So I think something of why I like it is that it's tangible. I think another reason I appreciate it is that for most things that we get in life, we have to pay for, right? With real estate investments, particularly as they relate to rental properties, whether commercial or residential, I love the idea that while I may have to outlay some money initially, I should hopefully get it back very quickly, and then I just let somebody else buy the property for me. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of me not having to pay for an asset. Yeah. And then hopefully in the future, that asset then funds some form of retirement. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I have a goal to be able to fully retire at 52. I want to have the option to do that, mm-hmm. to where I get out of the practice of law and I just passively own investment properties. I highly doubt that I'll actually choose to do that when I reach the age of 52, because those are going to be high earning years for me. My kids will be out of the house, will be empty nesters, and I'll have more time to work. And so I highly doubt I'll actually do that, but I want to have the option. Yeah. Real estate investment can greatly aid in that goal. Yes. So I like it. It's multifaceted why I like real estate, but like I said, I want it to fund my retirement, and that retirement presumably will still involve me working anyway, mm-hmm. but maybe less than the 80 hours a week I was working for the last 4 months of last year. Yeah. The end of the year always tends to be really rough for me as a lawyer. But my wife and I love to travel, and so I would like to own real estate that can then continue generating income while we travel abroad. Mm-hmm. So I would say those are the 3 main reasons why I like real estate.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that you and your wife are really passionate about traveling.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we are too. We usually take around 5 trips a year, and I don't know, like, I would like to get that to double in the next year or 2, but for now, I feel like that's pretty good overall.
I would say my wife and I traveled more, obviously, when we had fewer children and when they were younger, because grandparents were, I would say, happier to watch them. Mm-hmm. As we continued to multiply. It was harder, I would say, to get the grandparents to agree to that. Mm-hmm. Now, we are not the type to ever try to force our children on their grandparents, but my mother had always said, anytime you guys want to travel, ask us first and see if we want to have the grandchildren come hang out with us. And then up until the beginning of last year, her mother still lived in South America. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we had to do this weird combination of taking some of the children to my parents' place 2 hours away while flying her mother up from South America for a couple weeks. And that would be how we got to travel and go on an actual vacation, mm-hmm. without children. We're now, like I said, we're now at 5. it's harder to do that. So we still travel, but they're, as we were discussing before we started, they're trips. They're not vacations.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun with our children, but there's little to no relaxation, and so it's not a vacation. So yeah, we love to travel, and we hope to instill that love of travel in our children. So they've done, I would say, a fair amount of traveling. They've definitely traveled way more than when I was a kid. And we're heading to Scotland in a couple weeks with all 5 of them, and we're going to travel around Scotland a little bit for about 9 days. So that's going to be
that sounds like an awesome trip. But
I
mean, the kids.
I think so. I think it's going to be an awesome trip. If you never hear from me again, it will be because something bad happened on that trip, and we just didn't come back.
Yeah, I actually wanted your opinion on this. So obviously, you've done pretty well for yourself. What's your opinion on like your kids? Like, so I want to give my kids a lot in life, but I don't want to hand it all to them, right? So I want them to earn it. And so they'll probably be kind of accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and then they'll have to also go out and earn it eventually, and they won't just have the lifestyle we had. So what's your plan as far as that goes?
I would say it's the same. I mean, obviously we're going to have different interpretations of how that actually plays out for your family and my family respectively, but I completely agree. I wasn't handed anything growing up. I grew up in a middle-class family, probably lower middle class, but still middle class. My father was a public school teacher and coach. My mother was an x-ray technologist at a hospital that was a 45-minute drive each way growing up. So she was gone before we awoke in the morning, and she generally wouldn't get home until 6 o'clock-ish, something like that. And then my dad was teaching and coaching. So I feel like I grew up understanding the idea of hard work, and nothing was handed to me. They didn't pay for my college education. I had scholarships, and the rest are student loans that I'm still paying now. So yes, my wife and I have had that conversation many times that I do well for myself. I work hard and I make a good living doing it, but we don't want our children to grow up spoiled.
Yeah.
Some of that's hard because my mother and her mother and my grandmother, they tend to want to spoil the kids. I get it. I understand it's a grandparent's prerogative, but we try not to spoil them too much. I think to a certain degree, the life they live would be seen by many as being spoiled. I think that's just the nature of it. The more you may have, even if you're not affirmatively attempting to spoil your children, to a certain degree, if they have more than any other child, at least relative to that other child, they may be spoiled. So while we accept that reality, we try to instill in them hard work. When I'm driving my children to school in the morning, we talk about religion and about investing, about hard work, sacrifice, things that at least my wife tells me is not a normal thing to discuss with your elementary age children when you're taking them to school, but it seems like a good idea to me.
No, that's good.
So an example is we don't give them allowances. They can earn an income from us by performing their job duties. They all have responsibilities and duties that they have to perform. If they don't get paid. If they do them, they get paid. And then off of that, they tithe 10%.
Awesome.
Then the next 10% goes into savings, and then they can spend 80%. Now, I've tried to get my wife to allow me to change that setup to the way we do it, to where 30% gets set aside for taxes, and we live on 50% or less. She doesn't want to do that. She thinks it'll convey the wrong message to the children because they won't then get the joy of spending the money as much. So I've accepted that. But we try to teach them that they have to earn everything they get. And we've already told them if they go to college, which we've talked off the recordings about my thoughts on college, but if they choose to go to college, or if they choose to go to some kind of training, vo-tech school, whatever, that requires some kind of payment for that training or education, we're not paying for it. My parents didn't pay for mine. Her parents didn't pay for hers. And I think there's something to that if you don't think it's going to be free and handed to you, you treat it differently.
Yeah. That's actually like my dad actually gave me $1,000 one time that I had to pay back for my books, and then he didn't end up making me pay it back, which I thought was a huge deal because I had to go out and earn, pay for my college or figure out programs to help me pay for college and all that. And so I thought that was really that was a big deal for him to give me that. But it instilled that in me, I have to do it myself. And so that was really good.
I have to make decisions that I am ultimately later on I'm going to think they're worth it. I'm going to be responsible for these. And I went to school with too many rich kids on the East Coast that they didn't care. Mm-hmm. Flunking a class, wasting $3,600 to $4,000 in credit hours, because when I went to school there, it was $1,200 a credit hour. Wow! And so each 3-hour class was $3,600 to $4,000, depending on cost of books to go with it. They'd fail that class; it didn't bother them. Mm-hmm. That would have stressed me out because I needed 120 hours to graduate early. Mm-hmm. I had 120 hours exactly, which meant if I had failed any of those classes, I couldn't have done it in 3 years. Now, I will say this, and I hope my children never see this podcast, at least not until they're much older. Maybe you do so well and you're famous enough that they go back and look at archived podcasts from way beyond. Yeah. But my wife and I have discussed the possibility that if they go to some kind of college or training program or whatever that costs money, that it's on them. If they complete it, we may consider paying that off for them. Mm-hmm. That way they don't have that student debt later on, mm-hmm. but they're not going to know that ahead of time. Yeah. I have very strong opinions about that because so many people, they're not thinking ahead. They're not thinking about the consequences of their actions when they're young, which it's hard to do. I understand that. We're not even fully matured until, and I say matured, I mean brain formation until 25 years old. So I'm not talking about maturity, just our brain is not done forming when we're 18 and making those kinds of decisions. Yep. But at the same time, I think that we live in a society that too often doesn't teach young people that there are going to be long-term consequences for your actions now. Yep. It's the what is that, YOLO or whatever, YOLO. The thing of I'm going to do what I want to do now and I don't care what happens later. Mm-hmm. I don't know if YOLO is still a thing, but
I don't know.
When I first heard it several years ago, I was like, that's dumb. Yeah, but still.
Yeah. People don't, if you could have $10 now or $100 in a few weeks, most people just take the $10 now because they don't care. They just, you know what I mean? They just can't see far enough ahead. They just feel like the future is never going to be here. So
absolutely. I mean,
delayed gratification is something that really.
In my practice of law, there are certain situations, cases, what have you, that I deal with where I can get my client out of a jam by paying a small amount of money to the other side, that if they were really thinking long term, they could get more money out of my client, mm-hmm. but they don't want to wait. Yep. They want to get it now. So I can help my client pay less money, even though they got to pay it now. They're still paying ultimately less money than they otherwise would if the opposition was willing to wait just a little bit longer. Yeah. So we're trying to teach our children that concept as well. Is just you don't have to have it now. Mm-hmm. I mean, the easiest one for my children is they constantly complain about how they want this big toy. I'm like, well, if you had just saved all that spending money, that 80% of what you're earning and doing your job duties, if you had saved it rather than every time you get it, you got to go buy one small toy, you could then pool it together and get that big toy. Yeah. Of course, then they complain about, then they're not buying anything, which then leads to a conversation about life is not about the acquisition of toys, you know.
Like you're basically teaching them opportunity costs. Like they're sacrificing their opportunity to buy the big toy because they're focused on the little toy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So right now, my big toy that I'm wanting is a Lamborghini. So I have to buy an asset that'll pay more than the monthly payments to buy the Lamborghini. So that's kind of the goal I'm working towards right now.
I'm not a car guy, so Lamborghinis don't mean anything to me. Like I hear they're great vehicles, which is probably why you want it. Yeah. I just don't know anything about vehicles, engines, cars. I drive a 10-year-old F-150. So yeah. I would say good luck with that then. Good luck. If you find that kind of an asset and you find a spare one, let me know. Mine won't go to pay for a Lamborghini payment, but it'll pay for some other thing I want. Yeah. Probably a trip.
Yeah. All right. So let's hear it. What's your opinion on college?
Oh, man. So I think that the American education system is extremely detrimental to the country's youth because particularly public schools feed this idea into our children. They cram it down their throats from elementary school that to be successful, they have to go to college. And I completely disagree with that. Now, did I go to college? Yes. And did I then subsequently go get a doctorate? Yes. But I think that's because there are just certain careers that if you want to do that, you have to go to college. There's no way around it. In order to get a doctorate in law, a JD, I have to go to law school. In order to go to law school, to get in, I have to have at least a bachelor's degree. So there are some prerequisites that mandate that my attendance at college. But is that true for everybody? Absolutely not. I mentioned before we started recording, my little brother, he went to 1 year of college because it was free. And then at the end of that year, he told me he didn't really want to go back. So I talked him into not going back. And it upset my mom and it upset my dad. But I knew my little brother didn't need to go to college to do the things he wanted to do. He likes to be outside working with his hands. Mm-hmm. Now, are there some people who have careers outside and working with their hands that need college degrees? Of course there are. But I knew he didn't need that. He knows he didn't need that. So he stopped going. And I wholeheartedly supported that because there are so many careers that one can do in the United States that don't require college education. And so what happens then is when everybody's trying to go to college, what that ultimately does is the ones who need to be there to do what they want to do, it costs them more money than it should. And then the ones who don't need to be there, it costs them more money than it should. Mm-hmm. So all that happens is we pay more for college than we would if only the people who needed to go actually went. Mm-hmm. They're hiring more professors to cover all the additional students. They've got to expand their campuses. So everything costs more. Well, they pass that cost off to the students. So I don't like it for the economic reasons, but I also don't like it for the reason that there are many young students in high school who can show a level of entrepreneurial creativity, a desire to go and make something out of nothing that doesn't require a college education. And what schools are telling those kids are, no, that's not a viable way to earn a living. You need to go to college. Mm-hmm. Well, there are so many examples sitting in the room here too of why that's not the case. I mean, you and I both know a number of real estate investors who are doing very well, who if we talk to them, they'll tell us they didn't go to college. Mm. And it's not just real estate. It's all kinds of stuff. You can start businesses without a college degree. Now, maybe would an accounting or a finance class in college help you along the way of starting your own business? Probably. Yeah. But can you also learn that stuff from books and YouTube? Yeah, you can. Mm. Can you pay a CPA to help you with that? Well, if you're making enough money in your business, yes. Mm-hmm. So as much as I told you I could, and I will try not to, I could go on about college for a very long time, but I will just stop there and summarize by saying, is college a wonderful thing for the people who need it? Yes, it is. Yeah. Is it a terrible thing for the ones who don't need it? Yep, it is. Mm-hmm.
Like my experience was, I actually set a goal to drop out of college, but in order to do that, I needed to be at a certain point. In my opinion, I needed to be at a certain point. So whenever I started my second phone store, that's when I dropped out. And my parents were, very up my butt about going to college and staying in college and getting my degree. And whenever I started that second store, it kind of softened that blow because at least I had something else that I was doing, kind of branching out. And the entrepreneurial thing was, I was studying entrepreneurship anyway, so I was doing what I was studying anyway. So, it wasn't such a big deal.
Yeah. Think about it. If your degree is in entrepreneurship, what's the better trainer? A professor of entrepreneurship who may or may not have ever done anything that's of an entrepreneurial nature. Mm-hmm. They might be an adjunct professor and they're being an adjunct because they have their own business. They've started their own business or businesses. And so they're trying to teach young people how to do that. That might be a good example. But if it's like law school, most of my law school professors never actually practice law.
Mm-hmm. And that pisses a lot of people off because you're learning from someone that hasn't even done it. It's like you don't go like for me, would I pay my mentor that hasn't done the stuff that I'm trying to do at any capacity? Like, would I pay someone that's doing less than me to teach me how to do something? Like, I know that sounds really harsh saying it, but like I wouldn't. I think it's just realistic. You don't go down.
No, absolutely. That was one of the things that annoyed most of my classmates and I in law school. The most of the people who end up teaching at law schools and it's probably not every law school, but some of your higher law schools, and I don't mean a top tier, which is usually the top 20. Mizzou was it's not a top tier law school. But I would say anywhere, even in your top 50 to 100 law schools in the country, I would say the vast majority of professors that teach in law schools haven't practiced law, or not in the way that most people practice law. The reason they're professors, by and large, is because they went to prestigious law schools, top tier law schools. They then went on to clerk for some prestigious judge, and then they started teaching. Or maybe they worked at an appellate law firm in DC or New York or something, which it's not the everyday practice of law that most lawyers in the country do. Mm-hmm. And when we all kind of like recognize that, we kind of got annoyed because they're teaching us how to practice law when maybe 2 or 3 of our classmates will do what they did. They'll go, they'll be at the top of our class, they'll go clerk for judges, and then they'll try to teach at law school. That there's a couple of them, and that probably helped them. Mm-hmm. So what we had to accept was that law school basically just taught us how to take the bar exam and pass the bar. It was only once we got out, got licensed, that we actually learned how to practice law. And it's an ever-changing thing. We're always learning something new. It's why it's called the practice of law, as opposed to the the constant expertise, never-changing practice of law. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think you know where I'm going with that. Yeah. So yeah, I would say, especially from an entrepreneurial perspective, what makes more sense, going to college to learn from someone who may or may not have ever started or run their own business, or just going out and actually doing it? And yeah, you risk failure, but failure's probably the best teacher in life.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What's your opinion on those who can't teach? Do you feel like that's kind of exactly how it is, or no?
I don't think so. I think that's true for a number of people, those who cannot teach. I don't think that's entirely inaccurate. It's similar to a lot of people who coach. Those who cannot coach. So if you're playing a sport and you can't quite make it to that next level, some people convert to coaching. But that doesn't mean that everybody who coaches is just someone who couldn't play very well. Some people just really enjoy coaching. Mm-hmm. Some people really enjoy teaching. I also think that some of the best teachers are the ones who can do. You learn from the ones who've already done whatever it is you're wanting to be able to do. You learn from those who are successful at it, see what they did. Are you going to be able to do it exactly like they did? Probably not. But you can at least learn from how they succeeded. Mm-hmm. So I would disagree with the assertion that those who cannot teach. That's sometimes true, but it's not always true.
Yeah. So is there any daily habits that you have that you recommend people do every day that's consistent and will help them get further in life?
Because of my faith, I would recommend reading and studying the Bible every day. Yeah. And to those who are not of the Christian faith, if they are a member of a different religious order or a different faith, being involved in that and reading whatever your scriptures are daily. There is something that is, I don't want to say magical, that implies the wrong thing, but it is deeper than surface level when you can engage with the higher power. Mm-hmm. And I do that through reading scripture and meditating on that. Mm-hmm. Prayer along a similar line is the same thing. Yep. Conversing with a being that is supreme and has created everything, I think is an important habit to have. And I don't think it should just be a habit, but it may be that it's a habit to start with, because once you've done it long enough, it's no longer a habit. It's just a part of your life. Yeah. Getting away from the spiritual, though, and this is something that I had to learn, and I'm not perfect at it, but daily exercise of some kind. That doesn't mean going to the gym, but doing some kind of physical activity will generally just keep us healthier longer. Mm-hmm. And I think more importantly, when you compare most of the U.S. to, say, blue zones around the world, it's not just physically healthier, but when you engage in a healthier lifestyle overall, your cognitive abilities remain sharp longer. Yeah. We have a significant problem with cognitive issues amongst the elderly here in the U.S. that in certain parts of the world you just don't see. And when you compare how they live versus how we live, there's some telling things. And so
absolutely.
So one exercise of some kind is an important thing. Diet is another.
That's a big one.
That's a big one.
I mean, we talked about this before.
Yes.
We're both pretty, like, at least our wives are pretty big on, like, organic food, and especially for the kids and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're not above going and eating out and whatnot.
Oh, I'm a fat kid at heart. I told you that. I was raised as a 90s child on junk food and sugary snacks. So I still love that stuff. And I struggle not to eat those things. It helps with a wife she does pretty much all the cooking. She's a homemaker, so she's at home and she's managing the household and she's preparing the meals. And so she prepares healthier meals, so that takes away some of the temptation I may have. But even still, if I go into a gas station, I want snack cakes. I can't stop myself from wanting it. I really try hard to stop myself from getting them, and usually do pretty good. But I go through phases. Like right now, I'm carrying a little bit extra weight because last fall was the busiest time of my career. A lot of hours working. My eating was not great. My drinking was not great. I was drinking a lot of diet soda, and I was not exercising really. So once I got past that and into the Christmas holidays, when I stopped working to spend time with family, was when I started eating right again and getting back into the gym. But so in terms of daily habits, I think some kind of physical activity is very important.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if this is a habit so much as a lifestyle, but eating foods that are good for your body, not just something that satisfies an immediate desire for satiation, something that's like salty or sugary or crunchy or whatever these things are that the food industry has determined that sends signals to our brain that says, yes, we want those potato chips because they're salty and they're crunchy. But eating stuff that's actually good for you. And I really hope my wife watches this podcast so that she knows I'm saying this out loud. I do believe her. She is right about this. But then I also think one of my daily habits, and it's really my only addiction in life. I don't really have any addictions. I don't have an addictive personality, but I am addicted to books. For whatever reason, I love reading. And so I have a habit of reading daily. Now, sometimes I don't get to read as much as I want to. I have a goal of reading at least 40 pages of whatever book I'm reading every day. Dang. Sometimes it's not that. And there are days where I don't get to read. It just, unfortunately, there's not enough time, and I fall asleep before I can pick up a book. And then other days I'll read more than that. So I think learning, and that just goes to learning and exciting your mind. So while I love reading all types of books, fiction, just general adventurous fiction is something I really enjoy because it excites my mind. It puts me in a different world. So those are my main habits that I would say. I try to wake up at 5:30 every morning.
That's good.
Some mornings it works and some mornings it doesn't. We try to be in bed by 9:30. Some nights it works, some nights tonight. My oldest, he has a doubleheader. Like I said, he plays at 8 and 8:40, which means we will not be in bed by 9:30. It's reality. Yeah. So I would say those are my main habits. Beyond that, every day is just so different between law, real estate, and the children and church. Every day is so different that it's hard to develop too many additional habits. Now, I will tell you that I have recently read Atomic Habits, and then a Christian-based habit book, which is Habits of the Household, which I highly recommend both of those books to anybody who's interested in them. And so it is very likely that my wife and I will be starting to work on developing some very small additional habits. But as of now, that's probably the bulk of it.
Yeah. It's your daily habits and your daily disciplines that make a person successful in my opinion. So I have a bunch of the ones you mentioned I'm real similar on. I usually try to wake up at 5 a.m. at least 5 or 6 days a week. And then I have a day or two where I'm a little more lazy, try to be in bed by 9:30, like you said. And actually this week I went to bed at 8 p.m. one night, and that was kind of a weird deal for me, but
you can probably see it here. I don't know if the cameras will pick it up. The dark circles under my eye, because last night I was not in bed by 9:30. Really? It was after 11, so I'm a little more tired than normal.
Yeah, but so for me, one of my habits is I get up, I take a cold shower. I just started doing cold only for a few minutes, and then after my shower, I'll go to the gym, come back, get my ice bath, then go back to my cold shower and then basically get ready and start my day. So that's kind of the routine that I started doing. And then I'm listening to personal development and trying to better myself and reading the Bible, all that stuff. So that's kind of what I
think that's wonderful. I will ask you something that may distinguish how we are different in our habits. I think we've talked about this a little bit, but you correct, you don't work a typical 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Your days are a little, I don't want to say more flexible because I don't want to imply you're not doing stuff all the time. But I think you told me a couple weeks ago that you have a few days where you're a little heavier on maybe kind of the work part, but then you also have other days where you build in a lot more, say, time with your wife and your children, correct?
Yeah.
So I have, in talking to a lot of people who both have kind of what I'm going to call regular day jobs, and then people who have a much more entrepreneurial, flexible schedule, I have found that the people who have your type of schedule have a lot more daily habits built in. Whereas
because it's a lot easier.
I think it's easy. I think it's two-part. I think it's easier because when I go to work, yes, I have habits at work, but I don't know that I call those habits because for me, it's just work. Yeah. I'm at 8:00, I'm in the office. I go to work out at 11:45. I'm back in the office by 1:15, and then I work till 5. Now, does that change? Sure. This is a Thursday. It's the middle of the day, and I'm here talking to you. So obviously, I'm not at work doing my normal thing. But a lot of my habits are stuff I do at work. So I don't think of them as much as habits. They probably are.
Yeah.
Like from 8 to 8:30, I tend to check emails that have built up. From 8:30 to 8:45, I'm typically doing some kind of research on either real estate, stocks, still trying to learn crypto. I still don't feel like I understand anything about crypto. I'm trying, but stocks, I'm checking stock markets. I'm seeing what's doing what's done what for the past few days or weeks. And then usually by 8:45, I'm digging into a project. Maybe I have an appointment at 9, or maybe I'm in court. But my thing is that changes daily because some days I'm in court at night in 9 o'clock, and maybe it's in Neosho. So I can't even do my normal habits in the morning because I have to drive to Neosho during that time. So my stuff changes a lot. But because I have what I'm going to call a more regular schedule, I find that I don't have as many of the daily habits as someone like you who my theory is that someone like you who has less of a regular schedule, you build in these habits to give yourself a regular schedule.
Yeah. That's actually pretty accurate.
It doesn't look like mine, but it's that way because people like you, people who are driven and ambitious and you have goals, if you don't have something like me where I have like an 8 to 5 job,
structure.
I don't have structure. That's right. You have to create your own structure. And so I've talked to a number of people like you have a lot of clients like you who don't have your 8 to 5, your 9 to 5, your regular day job, as it were. And they have to create their own structure because they don't want to be lazy. They're still efficient people. They're still ambitious people with drive. But when you're not saying, hey, I've got to be at this office or this manufacturing plant from this time to this time, the question is, how do you build in your own structure? And so these daily habits, I find that people like you have a lot more of those than someone like me.
Yeah.
It's a theory. I could be very wrong about that.
I think you're probably right. One of the things that kind of inspires or motivates me to do it, though, is like usually 4 days a week, I'll run 7 miles, and like 4 days a week. And so I try to do things that seem kind of, that's not crazy amount of miles or anything, but it's not typical. And so I like to do things that most people can't get themselves to do, or something that's like difficult. So like the ice bath. I don't like to get in the ice bath every day, but if I'm doing it because it's something that's hard and most people can't get themselves to do it, and it just makes me feel good. Like I'm doing something that most people won't do. So
I also have to say I love cold water. My house is on a well, and so throughout the year, most of my showers are just as cold as it can possibly get, and it's well water, so it's already really cold.
Really cold.
And then I actually, although some of my buddies, if they actually see this, will make fun of me, and I don't care. I love a good bath, a good scalding hot bath. But then what I do is I empty the water out, and then I fill it up with well water while I'm still sitting in it. So I love cold. Cold is good. Now, certain days of the year, the coldest days of the year, I enjoy a good hot shower. But most days, I love cold water. It drives my wife nuts.
Yeah.
So.
My wife's the same way. Most of the time, if we take a bath together, she burns me out. Like, she has it way too hot, and I'm like, how are you in this?
My wife actually made me watch something last night, a video, a kind of a comedy video of this couple, of what it's like for a married couple if they ever want to take a shower together. And she was cracking up, and I didn't even laugh at her because I'm like, it's too real. It's so right. There's something about, at least my wife and apparently your wife, it's like they want to take a shower in lava.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand. I don't understand
it. Burns.
It hurts. It hurts bad.
Yeah.
And then of course I want to take a cold shower, and she thinks I'm psychotic for that.
Exactly.
So I don't know. Something about our skins are just different.
That's funny. So what goals do you have? Like, give me a few of your shorter term and then a few of your longer term, and then what you want your life to kind of look like whenever you're maybe 80 or whatever.
Okay. First, I hope to make it to 80. While I'm living a healthier lifestyle now, as I said, I was a 90s kid. My lifestyle growing up was very unhealthy. I was always active, but food was, I didn't think of food the same way. So goals. Interesting conversation here to have. I'll try to keep it brief. My wife and I, we set annual goals each year. They're not resolutions. We don't call them resolutions. It's just, it's a goal. What do we want to accomplish this year? So I would say family wise, because that's the most important to me. We wanted to take at least one international trip with our kids this year. As I said, we're leaving for Scotland in less than 2 weeks. So hopefully we'll check that goal off. We're going to be taking them to the beach in July, I think. So I think I mentioned before we started recording that we try to take our kids to the beach every year.
Yeah.
It's a different beach every year, but we try to take them to a beach.
Well, that's good.
So we're going to do that with the family. We have goals relating to our children's maturation that I won't bore you and your audience with, but we have things that we want to try to do with our children to help them grow as individuals who know the love of Jesus, but also know that being a family involves doing family things, which are not always fun, but we want them to have a family like we have. We want them to have, whether they're married, whether they have children, whatever, they are in a close relationship, in a loving relationship with the people that they're near when they're older. So family-wise, we have a lot of goals, but again, a lot of them are related to just our natural flow of life because, like, as I told you, we have so many things going on to the point where a couple years ago, my wife and I stopped using the word busy. We don't say we're busy anymore because psychologically we figured out that our notion of, we're so busy, it was a negative thing. It
is. I think about that as well.
So we actually we're weirdos. We started saying that we're adventurous or we're active. Nice. So when we're looking at the schedule during, like, leading up to the week, it'll be like, hey, how active is our week? How adventurous is our week? But it's kind of weird, but I will say this, it at least has made us look at it differently, and we are more positive about it.
That's good. That's really good.
But back to goals. Professionally, as a lawyer, I have a goal to grow our law firm to 8 to 10 lawyers in the next 5 to 10 years. I can't make it but I'm choosing not to make it a super concrete goal because it is very difficult to get lawyers to want to move to a small town. Yeah. It's not just rural Missouri, it's the whole country. Most established attorneys who are older, they're already set where they are. They don't want to move anywhere. And then people that are just coming out of law school have this notion that the only way you can make money as a lawyer is by going to the big cities, which I adamantly disagree with, but that's the perception. And so I am very confident that we will find attorneys to fill those 8 to 10 spots. I just don't know exactly when, but I would say no more than 10 years, but I would like to see 5 years. We would be able to do that, which will obviously increase our staff numbers as well. We have our main office in Carthage. We have a satellite office in Nevada, and I have a goal of opening another office at some point when the numbers justify it. Yeah. I think we see ourselves as a firm that has an ability to fill a void, and it's a void created by the realities that I just mentioned, which are your older attorneys who went to small towns voluntarily, or maybe they went back, maybe they were from there. They're either dying off, they're retiring, or they're becoming judges. So the private practice of law in rural communities is getting less and less, and that's part of the reason we went to Nevada. Is there's a void there for legal services. There's a vacuum, and I want to fill that. I tell people sometimes that I'd like to think I'm a good lawyer, but I think I'm a better businessman than I am a lawyer. So I saw a vacuum, I saw needs, and I wanted to fill it. There's money to be made, and there's service to be provided.
Honestly, I completely agree with you. I would much rather be a businessman than a lawyer because you can only do so much yourself. Like you can maybe increase your fees to where they're pretty high or whatever, but you're ultimately capped. But if you have other people and you're a businessman and you have a bunch of other lawyers working under you, that's where the money's at.
That's what my goal is. There's a reason I said 8 to 10. I don't want it to do. Right now we have 5. But 2 of them are the original guys, the Checkett and the Polly in our law firm's name, and they're older and they're still working now, but we all accept the reality that it's not going to be forever, and it may not be for much longer. So we'll need to replace them, and I want to hire more people because I see myself in that 5 to 10 year period being able to step back a little bit from the practice of law instead of putting in, on average 60 to 65 hours a week. Again, there are times of the year where it's more than that, but 60 to 65 hours a week, but I'm doing 50 hours of legal work and then 10 to 15 hours of business work for the law firm. I would like to see that change to where my hours overall drop, but more so my legal practice hours drop. I can still facilitate my clients' needs by having other attorneys work on that stuff. But me personally, I'm more than managing the business as the majority of my time. I'm managing clients. I'm acquiring new clients. That's kind of where I see that in the next 5 to 10 years. Does that happen? Who knows? But that's the goal. Real estate. So I have a partnership with 2 other guys, and we have properties, and we don't have a set goal for how many we want to acquire this year. But I have recently, I think, got them on board with changing our model of properties we're looking for, which is good. And then my wife and I also invest in properties, and we do have a goal. We want to buy at least 15 units, 15 doors this year.
That's good.
What that looks like, we don't know. I mentioned to you that I'm closing on one this afternoon. Unfortunately, it's the first one this year. I'm working with a guy, hopefully getting 6 or 7, but I don't know if that, as you know, you never know if that's really going to happen or not. So we have goals there. Now that's the short term. The long term is I would like to have an interest in at least 500 doors by the time I'm 45. I'm 36 right now, so that's 9 years.
It's doable.
It's doable. It's doable. Is it daunting? Yeah, it is. But is it doable? I know it is because we know people who have done that. So that's what I want to have by the time I'm 45. As I told you, I want to have the option to retire at 52. I don't know that I yet have a goal of how many do I want to own by that point, or how many lawyers do I want to have at 52. I just want the option to be able to retire from the practice of law, which I probably will not elect to do, and I want to have at least 500 units at 45. Now, your question was at 80. If I make it to 80, I hope that by that point, I am no longer practicing law at all. I have no desire to do that. Most lawyers seemingly die at their desk. They just never fully retire.
That's really true.
Yeah. And I understand why. You get guys that are in, guys, gals, whatever, you get people in kind of manual labor jobs. They have to retire. Their bodies demand it. They can't keep doing the same thing. Well, for lawyers, our work is with our minds. And so as long as our minds are still good, you can keep working. So that's why a lot of lawyers just keep doing it. I don't want to do that. Like I said, I want the option to retire at 52, but I don't see myself doing anything past 70. And honestly, it's going to be long before that, 65, maybe 60. So if I reach to 80, it will be no legal practice, but I hope to still own a lot of rentals and use that income to just fund my wife's, our travel. We see ourselves just probably having a house in the U.S., but spending most of our years traveling abroad and visiting children and grandchildren. We may not have a house here, so it may be like, hey, kids, grandma and grandpa are coming. We're gonna live at your house for 3 weeks because we don't have a place to live, so we're gonna come visit you for 3 weeks, and then we're either going to one of your brothers or sisters, or we're going back overseas, or we're traveling elsewhere in the U.S. So
that's the retirement that I'm talking about too.
I don't care to live in the same place and do the same thing all the time. I think that's where also a lot of, going back to this notion of like the blue zones that I was mentioning earlier, if you compare these individuals' retirement years to a lot of Americans' retirement years, it's not the same.
Okay, what's blue zone? I didn't really know what you were saying.
Yeah,
really.
so blue zones are concentrations of centenarians. So they are groupings geographically of where there's a much higher proportion of people who live to 100 or more. And so there are constant studies are being done to figure out what it is that allows these people to live longer. And then when they go look at these people in their lives, they're not just living longer, they're living healthier, active lives longer.
Yeah. You go to a lot of other countries and you go to the beach and you just don't see, I know it sounds bad, but you don't see fat people. Like it's weird.
You're not incorrect. I mean, so some of the main blue zones that have been studied over time, Okinawa in Japan, and then Sardinia in Italy, the island of Icaria in Greece. These are places where there's just a higher concentration of people who live longer, healthier lives. There's some really good books written on them. But one of the things they look at, these people, when they retire, they don't go sit in a lazy boy in front of a TV all day. They're actively doing things until they're 80, 90, in their hundreds. I want to be able to do that. For however long I live, I want to be active. I want to be doing things. My wife and I, when we travel, we'll go to like an all-inclusive resort or something on occasion. We did that last year with our kids, the first trip out of the country with all 5 children.
Oh, wow.
Just to see how it played out. You know, we were self-contained. That was part of the goal, was not to be traveling around. We just wanted to see what it would be like to get them on a plane, take them somewhere else, and see what that looked like. So we do go to an all-inclusive on occasion, but my wife and I, our desired method of travel is adventure. When we went to Ireland in 2017, we rented a car and road tripped around the whole island for a couple weeks.
That's cool.
When we went to Italy, it was the same thing. We rented a car and we road tripped across the country.
That sounds like a dream. Like that's like a dream vacation.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Now you're going to have a lot of stressors that impact upon you as compared to, say, at an all-inclusive. But we got to do so many more things and see so many more things than if we had done we're going to go to one place and we're just going to sit. And that's fine. People love to do that. My parents they were creatures of habit. So again, we didn't have much money growing up, but every 4 years we got to go to Florida. And it was always Destin. We went to Destin, we got a condo, and we were at the beach. Like that was the trip. Well, that was better than nothing.
Yeah.
But that's not the way I like to travel. I like to see new things, experience new things.
We like to go on adventures.
Yes.
So that's really cool.
And so that's what I would like our quote retirement years to be. But I also look forward to volunteering. I try to volunteer now. I just don't have a lot of time. But I would like us to be able to have more time to volunteer. So traveling and volunteering is what I see at 80, if I can do, if I make it to 80 and my body still holds up. My wife will tell you that she believes it unlikely that my body will hold up that long, and she's probably not wrong. But I hope that answered your question. I could go on and on and on about goals, but those are kind of the big picture goals, short term and long term.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really good. I like that. So how does faith play a role in your business, or how important is it to you in your business? Do you tangle them together, or do you think they need to be left separate? What's your opinion on that?
So as a preliminary answer, faith is incredibly important to me. The faith, I should say. As a Christian, there are things that we all struggle with. And actually, strangely enough, one of the things that I struggle with and I always have struggled with the most is faith, because faith calls for you to accept and declare your allegiance to something that you cannot see or feel or touch. And I'm kind of your prototypical Missourian, like show me, you know? And my mind has always worked in a kind of a scientific manner, even from when I was a kid. And so the problem for me was always, well, I need some kind of explanation. Like, give me something. You know, just reading the Bible, while provocative, while I would say, when I say provocative, I mean it from a number of perspectives: emotionally, intellectually, philosophically. It in and of itself wasn't enough for me, and I've talked to enough people to say that I've been told that's sacrilegious, but then I've been by a number of pastors whom I trust. They're like, no, this is what people struggle with all the time. But I've read enough books over the years written by people who think like me that I now no longer. I'm not going to say I don't struggle with faith, but it's not to the same level. I've always believed in God, but having the faith and trust in a Lord that actually loves and cares about me and is not just some distant deity, that's part of what I've struggled with. So when I answer the question of how important is faith, for me, it's kind of a distinguishing factor. There's the faith as a colloquialism for Christianity and as a whole, and then there's my faith. My faith plays an important role because I try and daily fail to live like Jesus would want me to live. And that includes my work. That includes my legal practice. That includes my real estate investing. That includes my family. And that's first and foremost is my family is raising children and creating a family environment in our household that shows a devotion to the Lord. So then that's kind of the grand picture of answering your question. Now, directly to your question of what do I think its role is in my law practice or my real estate, I think that as a general matter, it plays a huge role. My faith should be, and I think usually does, but maybe not always because I'm a sinner and I fail daily, it should be guiding all of my actions. All of my decisions, all of my statements to clients, to other lawyers, to judges, my faith should inform all of those things. Now, do I sit at the table and preach the word of God to clients? I don't. I'm not saying I haven't. I try to play that. Maybe I should say it like this. I don't hide it, but I'm not
trying constantly to.
Yes, I'm not sitting at the table trying to witness to people right then in that moment. I've questioned myself as to why, and I've come to a satisfactory answer, and that is, in those moments, I think the good Lord puts me there to help them. But what may help them may not necessarily be me witnessing to them. I can, as a person who tries to be godly, as a lawyer who tries to be godly, I can assist them in their legal needs in that moment while showing them the love of God, but maybe not forthrightly saying you should know Jesus and go get baptized, and that will help you in your life. I meet a lot of people who need Jesus, I can tell you that. But yeah, I think for me there is I don't want to say a separation, but there is a distinction between maybe what I do and what a pastor does, right? I mean, that's their job. That's what they're doing. I think for the rest of us, if you're not in the vocation of ministry, most of us, our calling is to be a disciple in our daily work, and having other people see that as showing an example of what it is to love Jesus and to be loved by Jesus. So I hope that answers your question. I don't want to pretend like I'm hiding my faith. And I've had many a great conversations about the Lord at my conference room table, many a great conversations. But oftentimes it's because someone has made a comment that tells me either they're a believer or they're searching. They're seeking something, and then I see an opening and I can jump in.
Well, that's awesome, man. But a lot of people probably wouldn't do that, so that's really great that you are.
I'm not saying I did that to start my career. I was a little more hesitant about doing that. I don't know if I want to say afraid, but somewhat fearful that would turn a client away.
Yeah. And I kind of worried about that too. We were a little bit bold on it. We put Bibles out on both of our stores, and then
I saw that when I walked in. I liked that.
Yeah, and then we play Christian music, or at least sometimes we'll play Christian music and stuff. So I always thought that someone's going to come in here and be like, "This is ridiculous. Why do you have this?" and blah blah blah. It's actually been the opposite. There's people that just had potty mouth. They weren't mad at us or anything, but they were cussing, and and then they saw the Bible, and then they just kind of looked around for a minute, and then they just stopped cussing completely and acted a lot more normal.
I think some of that's a commentary on where we live. You know,
that's true.
We live in the Bible Belt, where even people who don't believe, there's some kind of cultural sensitivity to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was going to college in DC, I rarely saw that. You know, that was people just didn't care. Yeah. So some of that's a commentary on where we live, but I think some of it also is a notion in our society that we can respect other people's beliefs. And so if the person who walks in and sees the Bible who's got a potty mouth decides to shut up, it could just be because they're like, hey, I think this is dumb, but I don't want to offend them. I've had some good results, some good conversations that have stemmed from it, but I probably early in my career, I wouldn't say I hid it, but I definitely wasn't as forthcoming with it, even when there were moments that probably presented themselves. And as I had spoken about in a men's group that I'm in, and then in a small group I'm in recently with one of the guys, he's in both of them, he had said this. And so I've kind of referenced him, and I'll reference him again without saying his name. He said he struggles with the idea, the knowledge that he has been presented opportunities in his life by Jesus to talk to someone about Jesus, to show them love, and he's failed to do so. And he has to deal with that kind of guilt, regret, you know, knowing he did not take advantage of the opportunities presented to him. And so similarly, I know I've been presented opportunities to speak to people about Jesus in my profession, and I've chosen not to do so. I would like to think that those are mostly in the past, but I'm sure there's an opportunity that presents itself that I miss. But as a general matter, I don't see them as separate. However, I don't also see them as entangled.
Mm-hmm.
I see that more as God's calling me to utilize my position in whatever way I can, but which is separate from a vocation in ministry.
Mm-hmm. I've had many opportunities where I felt the Lord pulling on my heart to go and do something really bold and talk to someone about it, even when it's really uncomfortable. And every time I've done it, I felt like I was on top of the world whenever I did it. But then those times that I didn't do it, I just felt like a pice of crap.
You feel like it, and maybe not in the moment, but after, give it a few minutes, a few hours, you feel it.
You feel relieved because, I shook it off. But then it's like, and then you start really feeling it like, man.
Because for believers, the Holy Spirit loves to convict.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. Okay, so what's one of your favorite business books?
I had to... The author I couldn't remember, so I had to write it down look at my page here. It's called Built to Last, Successful Habits of Visionary Companies, and it's by James Collins and Jerry Porras.
I think I've heard of it. I don't think I've read that one. But
it's a phenomenal book that takes various industries, and it analyzes two companies within those industries. And granted, it's a bit subjective, but they have qualitative evidence for why they've reached their conclusions. And they'll pick a company that they think is built to last, and they'll analyze it and compare it to a company that's a similar company in the same industry or sphere, and analyze why that company is not built to last. A great example is, and I say great example, it was an example that sticks out in my mind. They compared Ford to GM.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it mentioned something about Ford.
And this is not... an invitation for people to, comment on your podcast about who likes Ford and who doesn't like Ford and who likes GM and who doesn't like GM. But if you just look at the companies and their history and what they've done throughout their history, it analyzes why Ford is a company that has been built to last, and why GM, not saying it hasn't been here for a long time, but you look back during the TARP times back in 08, 09, 10, who's taken money from the government to be bailed out and who's not. GM took money, lots and lots of money. Ford took no money. So they utilize, again, qualitative evidence and quantitative evidence to examine why companies are built to last, and they reach conclusions about if you want to run a company, you want to have a company that is built to last, these are some things that, although there's no guarantee that they're going to make you succeed if you do them, and if you don't do them, there's still no guarantee that you won't succeed. But these are some things that if you want to give yourself a great chance of succeeding, do these things. Things like setting core values. Here, outside of everything else, here are 3 or 4 or 5 core values that our company is going to operate under and abide by. And if we're asked to do something or we're presented an opportunity to do something or not do something and it does not fit within our core values, then we're not going to do it. So that for me, there have been a lot of good books that I've read over the years. As I mentioned, one of my only addiction in life is reading books. So I've read a lot of them. But Built to Last has been my favorite, the one that I will go back and continue. I'll go back and pour over different sections every once in a while just to kind of refresh.
Nice. That's awesome. Another question I had for you is, what do you think has made you more successful? Like after a lesson that you learned, maybe what's made you more successful because you learned that lesson?
As I mentioned earlier, and granted, I don't know if it was when we were recording or if it's among the numerous conversations we've had when we're not recording, failure, all sorts of failure. I would like to think that I've been very successful in life, but I would be lying if I said I didn't fail as many times as I succeeded. So the biggest one that probably changed who I was into who I am was my first semester of law school. So brief backstory. I was a very big fish in a very small pond growing up. My hometown, I played all the sports, did well in all of them. And I was valedictorian in my graduating class, and I was like president of all the clubs, and like it was very small. I had 49 people in my graduating class, not a big town. Well, that, as it often does with young people, turned me into a somewhat to rather arrogant individual. Looking back on it, it's embarrassing, but it grew me into the person I am now. So then I go off to college. And as I told you, 3 years, just so I didn't have to pay for a 4th year, all while I either had 2 part-time jobs or a full-time job, and graduated magna cum laude.
Dang.
I was puffed up. I felt real good. Got in early admission to Mizzou to go to law school, again, puffed up again. And then I get to law school, and I'm sitting through the classes, the lectures, and get ready for for each class, it's one exam at the end of the semester. That's your whole grade. So I was studying for those and felt real good about them. I felt like, yeah, I got this. I've got this material down. And take my exams, just assume it felt like I aced all of them as I walked out. I get my grades, and I did not ace all of them. I went, there were about 150 students in my class. After the first semester, I was in the bottom third, which was an eye-opening experience for me because I'd been either the top or near the top of everything I'd ever done in my life up to that point. Like I said, I was a good athlete. I would never say a great athlete, but I was a really, for my geographic area, playing a bunch of other small schools, I was very good. Overall, I was just probably, compare me to anybody else, I was just a good athlete. But again, I was top of my class of 49 people, right? I never had to study in high school. There was no studying. Because frankly, our high school was easy. If you even paid attention a little bit in class, you didn't need to study. So I get to college, I didn't know how to study. Some of my friends who went to like big high schools, like high caliber high schools, they had to teach me how to study. And I'm super appreciative of them even to this day. So at least when I got to law school, I knew how to study, but I thought I was learning the material better than I did. And then I find out it's not that I didn't learn the material, it's that I didn't know how to take a law school exam. That's what I found out. My professors were like, look, because I went and met with them, each one of them after I got the grade, when I come back next semester. And they said, we could tell you know the material. Like all of them, without exception, all of them said, we can tell you know the material, but this is not how you answer a law school exam. This is not undergrad where you give us everything under the sun to just show us what you know. When we ask a question, we want a direct answer to that question. If your answer's 3 lines long, but it's the right answer, that's good. On one of them, I was told that there was a perfect answer that one of my classmates had given, and it was 4 lines. Mine was 112 lines, and I got the lowest grade on that question of anybody that took the exam. And it was because I answered it as if I was still in undergrad, not in law school. So here's where I'm going with that. And that was the first time in my life I had been hit hit in the face with the notion that I'm not special. I'm not the cream of the crop. I was going to law school with a bunch of other very intelligent individuals. And that was the kind of characteristic about myself that I had put most of my pride in. My sinful pride was my intelligence. Because I always knew I was an intelligent person. But I thought I was just way more intelligent than everybody else in my young, arrogant days. I get to law school, I get smacked down, and I had to do a lot of introspection and figure out I'm not special. Am I intelligent? Sure, I'm intelligent. But am I even the most intelligent person in my law school class here? Absolutely not. And it was that point in my life that was a turning point to where my level of humility grew while my level of arrogance was reduced. And that has allowed me to grow into a better person. I will also say, like, one example that you probably wouldn't connect. When I was younger, I used to be very vocal about like sports and stuff. I would yell, and I have a brother who's like 8.5 years younger than me. So when I was first a lawyer, in the first couple of years I was a lawyer, he was still in law school. So I would on occasion travel to his games, and I would just, if things were going on, I'd just get up and start yelling. And I think a lot of that had to do with my still reducing level of arrogance, thinking I knew better than all these other people, these refs, these coaches, whatever. And as I continue to mature, now I'm the one, I sit at games and I don't say anything. My wife, I know you're probably going to watch this at some point, she's the very vocal one at sporting events. Whereas I just typically sit back and I enjoy just watching, So as far as like your question and how I've tried to respond to it, the failure of my first semester of law school opened my eyes to a lot of realities about my own personality and my own shortcomings that I think Jesus used as an opportunity to say, I'm going to grow you from this. It's going to hurt, but I'm going to grow you from this, because it did. I mean, to a certain degree, the beginning of that second semester, I was in I wouldn't say a state of depression. But it kind of destroyed me to a certain degree, because this image that I'd built up in my mind about who I was and who I was capable of being just got flattened. It got destroyed. And then he built it back up as, no, you can't be that because you were never meant to be that, but I can build you up into this.
I feel like that's confirmation for me right now, because sometimes when I get a big head, and my wife definitely sits there trying to pop it whenever I do start getting a big head, but I feel like God definitely humbles me and kind of puts me back in my place to where I can grow and become what I'm supposed to become.
Remind me how old you are?
27.
Okay. So my first semester of law school, I was 22, but I wouldn't tell you that I felt like I'm always growing as a person too, by the way. So when I say what I'm about to say, don't think I think I've reached the pinnacle of, human evolution in the way of humility. It would be the exact opposite of that by definition. But I mean, I was still struggling with it to a degree until I was 29, 30. It kept getting less and less. And I'm not saying that I still don't have those moments, right? I mean, I think we all do. When we have something happens in our lives that is successful, we tend to get a little puffed up about it, right? I mean, I'm just as guilty of that as anyone, and probably still more than some. But I think for you, it should serve as confirmation, because the more you grow, I think the more you can let the Lord work on you to becoming more humble and recognizing that none of what we have is because of our own doing anyway. Yeah. We have what we have because the Lord is gracious.
Yes.
We deserve nothing less than judgment and death. But because he is merciful, we don't get the judgment or death right now. And because he is gracious, we have the opportunity to do things in life that we're both doing.
We've been given the gifts. Like,
yes.
It's not us. It's because he gave us those gifts and those talents.
My wife has described me to other people as the hardest working person she's ever met.
Man, that's a big honor. That's a really big
to have my wife say that is a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't typically agree with her though. I have a lot of clients, not even reaching the level of colleagues, friends, what have you, just clients I know that I think work harder than me. But I also know that they think everybody else works harder than them. And I think there's something to that. I think that comes down to this idea that it's not us anyway. Now, regardless of one's belief in faith or a faith in God or a lack of a faith in God, even if it's just a faith in themselves, there's a notion that however hard you're working, someone else is outworking you. Mm-hmm. I don't ever want that to be the case, but it's reality. Mm-hmm. No matter how hard I work, someone is outworking me. And I just have to keep trying to outwork everybody else and to try to, at some point, pass that person. Mm-hmm. This person X. I don't know who this person is, but someone's outworking me. So my wife has described me like that, and I've just said, no, I don't think so. And then when we talk about why I don't think so, she ends up conceding my point, but she's like, that's not really what I was getting at. Because I'll say, it's not me. Whatever I'm doing in life, whatever gifts I have in life, whatever good things come to me and to our family, it's because of God. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean a faith in God means presents and treasures and cash and money and gifts and all that? No, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But the way I would describe it as I understand it is a faith in God, a true faith in God, should result in your goals in life conforming with the Lord's will for your life. Thus, the things that you want to happen are now the things that are going to happen in your life. On the other hand, like if I say I wanted to, sell all of my stuff and move to Madagascar without my family, I'm probably never going to accomplish that because that's not going to conform with the Lord's will for my life. Yeah. Now, I guess I should distinguish it. I don't believe in predestination. I'm not a Calvinist. I don't believe that we are predestined to a certain thing and nothing we ever do can change that path. I just think that if we are trying to conform our hearts to the Lord, then more likely than not, the things that are going to happen in our lives are the things that we both want and what the Lord wants. That's why they're happening, is because the Lord wants them. Mm. And if we conform our hearts to the Lord's will, then we will also want them. So, yeah, I don't know. As I told you, I can go off on tangents, so I apologize.
No, I like it. I thought what you had to say was really good. And I agree with your belief on all that. Another thing is I wanted to ask you, what does believe in yourself mean to you?
So I'm probably going to answer this in a way that may not be satisfactory. To me, a belief in myself is almost a thing that doesn't exist, because I believe that I'm only capable of doing anything through God. On my own, I'm not capable of doing anything. Like where I'm at in life, I could never have got here without God. Did I always see him working and moving in my life? No, of course not. But was he always there? Yes. Was the Holy Spirit speaking to me even when I was refusing to listen? Yeah. So on my own, I don't have abilities to succeed to where I'm at today. What I do think I have, the belief in myself, is I believe that God has given me certain gifts. Mm-hmm. I believe that he has given me certain talents.
And you didn't squander them. You applied them.
I would like to hope so. There have been many a time in my life where I have reached a conclusion that I have squandered opportunities that had I utilized the gifts he's given me, that my life would be in a different place than it is now. But overall, I think there are certain gifts that he has given me. And I'm going to say gifts. I'm going to distinguish gifts as in talents, and then gifts as in spiritual gifts. Mm-hmm. I think, well, I should probably say my wife thinks, although I would agree with her, that one of the spiritual gifts that I've been given is discernment, the mm-hmm. ability to discern. Excuse me. And usually the way that appears in my life is an ability to kind of meet people and very quickly discern whether or not I think I'm going to say good people. And this is not a judgment. I do many bad things in my life. I'm a sinner. But what I mean by that is, are these people that I think I can trust? Are these people that I think would be good influences in my life, in my wife's life, in the lives of my children? Or are these people I probably want to steer clear from? I have an ability to do that, and for a while it annoyed my wife because I would make what she thought were snap judgments about people, mm-hmm. people that she originally thought she wanted to be friends with. some period of time later, it usually turned out that my judgment about those people was at least mostly accurate. And it drove my wife nuts for a while. And then she came to accept that was a spiritual gift that God has given me. So that, I mean, I don't want it to seem like this is getting puffed up in my head about my ego or anything like that. So I'll like dog on myself for a second. I'm not a very compassionate person. I have struggled with that for a long time. My wife is incredibly compassionate, and I have tried to be more like her because she's more like Jesus in that regard. I was not given any kind of gift of compassion.
I'm the same way.
I'm harsh.
My thing is like I struggle with empathy. Like I don't show empathy very much.
I somehow I can do it when I'm dealing with people in the law. I don't know where it comes from, but clearly it comes from God. But like He gives me that ability in the law. But just in life, outside of my law practice, I tend not to be very empathetic. I tend not to be very compassionate. But I am discerning. I'm a discerning person, and I think we also think He gave me the spiritual gift of administration. I'm very good at like seeing what, here's what we need to do. What are the steps we need to get to that? Let's accomplish them, check off those boxes, and then we can get to wherever we're trying to get to. And then he gave me certain talents, and one of them is talking. I don't know if this is going well or not. But
I think it's going great.
As I told you, I could talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. It also used to drive my wife nuts, still kind of does, but she's also accepted that this is how I make a living. I use my words, whether in oral form or written form, to make a living. So I think that was a gift He gave me. And I'm appreciative of it because none of what I have in life would come from just me being, I'm going to say me being me. What's the phrase? You do you. No, I don't want to do me. I want to do whatever the Lord has designed for me. And that's not something I've always thought. I wanted to do what I wanted to do when I was younger, which actually kind of is how I ended up as a lawyer. I went to school in Washington, D.C. at a particular school to get a bachelor's degree in international service so that I could then take the examination to join the foreign service and work in embassies overseas. That was going to be my career. And then my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, thankfully, changed my mind on that. She said, that's not what I want to do. And then I had a second plan that I made up, and she nixed that too. And then I ended up just deciding, okay, what the heck, I'll go to law school, because I was living in a house with 5 other guys at the time, and 4 of them were saying they were going to go to law school. So it just kind of got me thinking about law school. And as I learned more about what lawyers did, I was like, yeah, I guess I could do that. I don't know, but she's nixed my other 2 plans, so I'll try this. And I say that because up to that point, I'd never even met a lawyer. So it wasn't like I grew up wanting to be a lawyer. But my point is, when I say she, I mean the Lord was speaking through her when she told me that she no longer wanted to raise children bouncing from country to country every few years to go to a new post for me. I am convinced now that was the Lord, that was the Holy Spirit speaking through her. Wow, but I fought it because I was like, no, I left Missouri to come out here with this one goal in mind. I didn't go to college not knowing what I wanted to do. That was what I wanted to do. It was the only reason I went there. It was the only reason I took on all those student loans to go to that super expensive university, to cover the tuition and books that wasn't covered by the scholarships. So all of these things, I had set up plans, and I was taking action steps, and I was accomplishing it. I was doing all those things, but it was because it was what I wanted. And luckily for me, I was still with my high school sweetheart, and the Holy Spirit was still speaking through her. And we then got married, and now I have a great life in Carthage as a lawyer and investing in real estate with 5 great children and a beautiful wife. But it came down to, I was convinced that my plan was correct because I was able to accomplish it. Not, I can accomplish the things that God gives me the ability to accomplish, and that I should be in step with His plan for my life. Yeah. So a little bit of a distinction there that took years to come to terms with.
I think, I don't know, I think you're really blessed, and I really like how you talked about, like I struggle with not giving God all the glory. Like, I feel like sometimes my pride gets to me and I take too much of that as like I did that, and I need to give him more the glory. And I really love how open you are about your faith. That's really awesome, man.
Well, I also don't want you to judge me on that, because this is not always. I mean, my pride gets in the way too. My ego gets in the way too. I try not to let it, and it's less and less as I get older. Mm-hmm. The more I feel like the older I get, the more I see my faults, the more I see my weaknesses. Whereas when I was younger, I was blind to them. So it was easier to let my pride think that I'm where I'm at because of me and because of my innate abilities. Not I'm where I'm at because I failed at so many other things and God was directing me here this whole time, and that's why he gave me whatever gifts he gave me. So I'm trying to take the opportunity on this podcast, assuming that you're going to have a huge reach, and I want people to hear that, even though in full confession, that's not how I've always approached this matter. I would say sometimes in the past, I am touting myself whenever I'm talking about whatever successes I've had, and I minimize my failures. Whereas I think here, I think something that the people that are watching and listening to your podcast can take heart in is that, as you probably have said numerous times, and will continue to say, we have failures. It doesn't mean we're not going to come back from them. For me, it's I have failures. God is going to bring me back from them, and he's going to put me on a path to be successful. Now, what does success look like? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Success is different for everybody. Some people can be completely successful living in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, living off the land, and that's their success. Other people are they're millionaires. Success is different for everybody, but I think it's a question of what is successful in the Lord's eyes for our lives is what is important.
That's really good.
Made it up on the spot. Coined that phrase.
Okay, so what's one of the things that you're scared to do, but you think it'll help you grow the most?
Well, it was something that we had talked about off the recording. Is a need that I see in my professional life of having more attorneys work for us. And I did mention earlier my goal to have 8 to 10 attorneys sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. But it's scary because when we hire a young attorney, someone who's fresh out of law school or recently out of law school, likely we're going to have to pay them a salary, which means they're not going to be. Sorry, I should come back to this because I was about to say something that you and your audience probably wouldn't know unless they're lawyers. There's a kind of a conventional wisdom that if you take on a brand new lawyer, you're probably going to lose money on them the first year. You hope to break even on them the second year, and then by the third year, you hope to maybe be making profit on them. Okay, so with that in mind, when we take on a new lawyer, and I'm not saying if, I'm saying when, although I told you it's a struggle finding a young lawyer who wants to come to rural America, wherever that is in the U.S., I'm confident we will do that at some point. But when that comes, we're going to be paying them a salary, and they're not going to be bringing in hardly any money to start with. I'm going to have to take more time out of my day to train them, which means I'm going to be either bringing in less money overall because I'm working less, or I'm going to have to work even more than I am now to bring in the same amount of money. Which will also then generate a need for additional staff. So again, there's greater numbers of salaries. I have a goal to, when the numbers justify it, open another office somewhere in probably rural Missouri. And that will be additional expense. So I'm scared of it. But I think that's what's going to help me achieve professional goals that I have that we discussed, both on the recording and off the recording. I would like to be able to essentially replace my own legal work with other attorneys doing that legal work, whereas I can then just manage the business side of it. So although it's scary and daunting, we took the first step last year. We opened our Nevada office, and that's worked out very well for us.
Good.
We're hopefully going to find an attorney who wants to live in and around Nevada, who wants to make that their home office. We haven't yet, but again, that's kind of related to the discussion we had off of the recording, that it's just hard to get lawyers, young or old, to want to go to a new place. Many of the older attorneys are established and they're not going anywhere. Wherever they're at is where they're at. So anyway, that's the scary thing, but I also think that it's what I have to do if some of those goals are going to be achieved.
Yep. I mean, at least you know exactly what you need to do to accomplish your goal. So you've already thought all that through. So that's good. I want to know what your opinion is on manifesting. Like, I don't know if you believe in manifesting or if you think that's bad. What's your opinion on it?
Well, I'm assuming this is a concept that maybe I'm a little less familiar with. So
basically, you have this belief, like my version of what I think of it is
similar to like manifest destiny that you learned about in history class? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't know about history class, but my version would be like you see a goal in your mind and you create that goal into reality. Like you see it in your mind and then eventually it becomes your reality. Like for example, my Lambo, like I see it, like I see myself driving it. I see myself enjoying it and all this other stuff. And eventually one day I'll own it and possess it. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that's a philosophy that has merit. I don't know that I've ever thought about it like that or referring to it as manifesting, but it certainly has merit. I think we're a lot of people the people that we all know who just talk. They just talk about, hey, I'd love to do this, I'd love to do this, and they take no concrete steps to ever achieve that.
Mm-hmm. That's the garbage.
That's the garbage, right?
Yeah.
They are the people they're not going to achieve it because they're just talking.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people like that. I'm sure you do too. And then there's the people who actually take steps. And I think for all of those people, to a certain degree, they have to be doing what you just described. I don't know how, unless you just get lucky once or twice or something, unless you are manifesting your visions, if you're creating what it is in your mind. For me, I would just call it goals. Like I set my goals, but it's the same idea. When I'm setting a goal, as I told you before, my wife and I, we set goals for each year, not resolutions. We don't form New Year's resolutions, but we set goals. It's not just putting it on paper. It's saying, this is what we intend to accomplish this year. We envision it. We know we may fall short. Mm-hmm. So I tend to go for the BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goals, stuff that I may not reach when I set it. But if I say I'm just going to, we've got, if I have a goal of 500 rental units by the time I'm 45 and I don't hit it, but I get to like 375, it's still 375 rental units,
Shoot
right?
For the stars, land on the moon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think this manifesting is a similar mindset. I think it maybe goes a little bit further as far as the formulation of envisionment, if you will, in your mind. But I think to be able to achieve a goal, you have to be able to see yourself achieving that goal. If you can't see yourself achieving the goal, you're probably not going to, because it's the seeing that does what I referred to earlier, that I am maybe better at than my wife. She's better at so many other things than me, but I can see where we want to be. And when I can see where we want to be, that helps me visualize what are the steps we need to take to get there.
Like reverse engineering.
That's right. I want to reverse engineer it to get to where I am today, back here. Mm-hmm. So then I know these are the steps I've got to take to get it. Yep. And even if they go off the rails, which life tends to do at some point, I know how to get back onto that track. If I miss this step right here just by a little bit, I can correct my course and come back onto that track. So I would say that's how I would interpret this new word that I'm learning now, manifesting, is I think it's a different word for a very similar philosophy that a lot of people have to adopt in order to be successful in whatever it is they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I guess I guess I would say I manifest. I didn't think about it like that, but it's me setting goals and visualizing and figuring out where I need to be, so that it's not a question of am I going to reach my goals? It's just when am I going to reach my goals?
Mm-hmm. That's really good. It sounds like you are manifesting without really realizing it.
Yeah,
too, so.
I guess so. But I like learning new terms. So,
the reason I asked you that is, I didn't know if you looked into it much, but in a way, some people think that's kind of like sinful, like because it's your own ambition and what you're wanting and all that stuff, and I'm not saying having things is bad, but how you value them can be bad.
Yes, 100%. Just having possessions doesn't make you sinful. God didn't say that rich people can never get into heaven. Mm-hmm. It can be difficult. Yeah. That's why he said it the way he did. But I think the question is, what is your goal with your things? I mean, my wife and I, we tithe. We give back 10% to the church, and we give to other ministries beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And we intend to grow that over time. It won't always be 10%. It will be more than that. Yeah. And that's not to toot our own horns. That's to say we don't see it as ours anyway.
Yeah.
He's just letting us borrow it and use it for a while we're here on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then it all goes back to him and goes to hopefully kingdom work, if you will.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as sinful. If what you're doing is when you are manifesting, if you are praying and you're reading scripture and you're trusting God, then going back to what I said a little bit ago about his plan and your plan, if his plan and your plan are syncing up, then what you're manifesting is the Lord's will for your life.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's the Lord's will for your life, then by definition, it's not sinful, right?
Yeah.
So I think as with most things in life, it comes back to what is your motivation? Is your motivation selfishness, ego, pride? Probably sinful then, whatever you're manifesting. If it is something that can glorify God and his kingdom, if it can in some way, I'm going to say, empower you to conduct more kingdom work, I don't think it's inherently sinful what you're talking about, envisioning where you want to be, because again, the goal for a believer is to have your desires be in line with God's will for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're manifesting something within that, then I don't see why it would be sinful. I think it's just like anything, though. I mean, alcohol. Here's a great comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol is not inherently sinful, but what some people do with it can be sinful. And I am no different than anybody else. I have had times when I've imbibed more than I should have, and not been real proud of it. But the alcohol is not what's sinful. It was what I did with the alcohol that's sinful. So I think manifesting is the same thing. It's not that a single thing is sinful. It's just like money. It's the love of money that is sinful, not money. So yeah, I'm kind of getting down a rabbit hole there, but I think it's analogous to say that what you do with something is what can make it sinful,
mm-hmm.
not necessarily the thing itself.
Yeah,
so
I completely agree with that.
I think manifesting sounds great. Again, it sounds like I've been doing it. I just didn't know it was called that. I was just setting goals. But yeah, visions, manifesting, setting goals, whatever. I think those are good for you, because without those, you could just be flapping in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a target.
Yeah,
somewhere you're headed.
You can't hit a target you can't see.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I completely agree with you there.
So what advice would you give to someone that really wants to succeed? Maybe they're younger and they don't necessarily have a great big plan for their life, but they just know that somehow they want to be successful. What advice would you give them?
The first one that I'd like to think that what I used to say was, this is how I live my life, but it wasn't. It's how I live my life now, and has been for the last 6, 7, 8 years. But before this, I had to accept that, no, I was lying. I was lying to myself, and I was lying to everybody else. The first piece of advice I would give to you is, don't care what other people think. I used to think I didn't care what other people think. I always said, I don't care I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I don't care what they think. No, I cared about other people's praise. I wanted their praise. I wanted their attention, their adulation. It was sinful, but that's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. Well, now I just realized, if you want to be successful in life, you have to be willing to walk a course that others are not.
Yep.
And when they tell you you're an idiot and you're not going to succeed and you're a fool for believing in God and you're stupid for wanting to start your own business and rental properties, why would anybody want to get into rental properties? You have to be willing to take steps, take courses, take actions, and not care what other people think about those. So that's the first piece of advice I would give. And then this is one that I've had to struggle with, and I'm still struggling with to a degree, is focus on your strengths and do what your strengths will allow you to do, and then be willing to pay other people who have the strengths that are your weaknesses mm-hmm. to accomplish the things that you are going to have trouble accomplishing. That's a mouthful, but I think you get where I'm going with that.
No, I love that. That's how companies are formed. That's how people become really successful. You can't do everything by yourself.
And I've had to accept this, and it's not an easy acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a doer. So I tend to just think, I'll just do it myself. Just do it myself. I'll make sure it gets done right. Get it done. As you just said, that's how successful people become successful. I have trouble with it, but I know it's kind of like investing in stock. Like I've got my money in the market, not all of it, but diversification, but I've got some of it in the market, and they're in very aggressive portfolios. I don't want that. That gives me like heartache because I'm a fairly risk averse person by nature, but I know that the conventional wisdom says when I'm younger, I need to be in aggressive stuff, and it gets less aggressive as I get older. Yep. I get that, which is why I do it. It's the same thing here. I know that I need to rely on other people. I need to delegate, and I've been doing it for the last few years, but there's improvement still needed. So it's kind of like a learn from my mistakes when we're talking about advice to other people who want to be successful but don't really know where to go. Learn from my mistake. Be willing to delegate. Be willing to pay people to do the things for you that you cannot do as well for yourself. Free yourself up to do the things you're really good at. And I say I don't do this great in my job, and that's mostly where it is. But like in my personal life, I'm great at it. I haven't mowed my lawn in, 8 years. Which is sad because I actually really enjoy mowing lawns. I like it. I'm a bit of an OCD kind of perfectionist. I love seeing the clean lines and stuff, seeing the final finished product that's clean and straight. I like that. But I haven't mowed my lawn in about 8 years because when I was doing it, we had a big enough, it was a couple acres, and it would take me 5 to 6 hours every Saturday to mow and to weed eat. Well, then I realized it's not worth it because I could pay someone at the time $50 a week to do what I was doing in 5 or 6 hours.
So it's $10 an hour.
At my hourly rate of legal work, I could do 30 at the time. I could do like 30 minutes or less of work, and that would pay 30 minutes or less of extra work. So work I wasn't otherwise going to do, that would pay for the mowing every week. Yep. And when it hit me like that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dumb. Yeah. Why was I mowing my lawn? Just because I enjoyed it. And I did enjoy it. And there are certain things you should do for enjoyment purposes, not just for efficiency purposes. And I get that. I agree with that 100%. But there are tasks that we can cut out of our lives and pay other people who are better at it. What took me 5 or 6 hours, a crew of 3 would come and they'd mow and weed eat the whole thing in 45 minutes. They were done. Yeah. I pay them $50. It was worth it for them, and then it became worth it for me. So it's that kind of thing that I would advise someone. The 2 things: don't care what other people think, and then 2 is accept what your strengths and weaknesses are, and pay people to accommodate your weaknesses. Yeah, pay them to make up for your weaknesses.
One of the, you mentioned lawn mowing and stuff. My biggest struggle right now is laundry. I really want to hire out laundry, but I'm too cheap right now to do it. So I'm hoping this year that I'll finally just hire it out and let go of the reins.
I get it. It's all these, what can we do? What's the phrase? I've heard someone use it, but they call them, no, not shortcuts, but life hacks or something. Is life hack a thing? Yeah. It's probably not what they mean, but in my mind, that's what it is. Like, that's what I think of when I think of a life hack, even though that's probably not what they mean by it. It's how can I make my life more efficient? I'm a preacher of efficiency. My staff in the office will tell you how much it annoys them when I'm constantly preaching efficiency and not wasting time and not doing things that we don't need to do just to do them. Yeah. But it's kind of like that. There are things that you should do just out of enjoyment. Again, I could not have a garden. My wife and I could not have a garden, and we could just buy all of our produce from the store. We could, or a farmer's market even. Let somebody else do the work. We actually enjoy growing the garden, harvesting the garden, preserving the garden.
And it's probably a quality time thing for you guys, right?
Quality's maybe a little bit rough. It can be very frustrating, but yes, it is. And we get our kids involved. So those are things that we have chosen to invest our time in literally at the expense of our money, because we could just go buy the stuff at the store. Yeah. But for a lot of things in life, you mentioned laundry. I've talked about mowing. If we don't need to do them, why do them? Pay someone else to do them. Free up our time to do other things, the things that will either not just make us more money. I think that's where a lot of people stop when they say, I'm going to pay someone else to do this because it frees me up to make more money. I think that's one aspect of it. What else does it do? It gives me more time to spend with my children, more time to read a good book, more time to read the good book, more time to pray. I mean, more time to sleep. That's the thing I've been missing out a lot over the last 9.5 years. Is ever since we had kids, I just don't sleep as much. And I'm working to try to sleep more. I'm trying to actively make sure I go to bed earlier and wake up at a good time based on so for instance, this morning, I did not wake up at 5:30 this morning because I didn't go to bed till after 11 last night. So I was like, I need to get a good night's sleep. I didn't get a great night's sleep, but I got at least an okay night's sleep. So my point is there are other reasons that we would pay somebody else to do things for us. It's not just to make more money, but that is a valid reason to do it.
So what legacy do you want to leave? I know you kind of hit on what you guys want to be, like what you guys want to do when you're 80 and all that. But like, so you mentioned like having 500 rentals. Do you want to pass that down to your kids? Do you want them to just earn it? Like we kind of touched on that a little bit, but what's your plan? Like kind of as you pass, what do you want to happen?
So I actually, maybe this is bad. I hadn't put a lot of thought into that until I got your questions ahead of time. And I had to sit and actually think like, what do I want my legacy to be? One jumped out at me right away. And that's leaving behind a legacy of devoted work for the kingdom of God. When I die, not from an egotistical standpoint, because I'll be dead, I won't care. But I want people to be able to look back on my life and say, he worked hard for the kingdom. Mm-hmm. I want that. But I don't want it, again, for me, but I want it because if I've done that, if other people can look back at that and say that, then it goes to the next part of my legacy, which is my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. When they refer to me, when I'm gone, they can refer to a legacy of kingdom building, mm-hmm. of loving Jesus, because I want to pass that on to them. I want them to grow as we're raising our children now in loving Jesus and knowing a relationship with him and knowing the joy that brings. But then hopefully then that means that they'll pass that on to their kids. Mm-hmm. And no, you can't control what your children or your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren believe or do. They may not all believe it, but it's our hope that if we can adequately show them the love of Jesus, they'll come to feel that and then develop a relationship with the Spirit themselves. Yep. So those are my main two legacies. I hadn't really ever thought of professional legacies. So I started thinking about it from a law firm perspective. When I eventually hang up the practice of law, I don't want to have it be where I grew a firm and then it diminished, and then when I hang it up, it was just me. Mm. I would like to take a firm that when Marianne and I took over, there were 5 attorneys. I would like to double that by the time I'm done. So get it to 10 attorneys and the requisite number of staff members, but not just from a numbers perspective. I want it to be a firm that has a reputation. I should back up. Checkett and Pauley had a great reputation. Had a great reputation before we got there. What I want for Checkett, Pauley, Bay, and Morgan is to I would say grow that reputation, increase that reputation as being a large law firm that serves the people in the rural areas of southwestern Missouri. Mm-hmm. So that's my law firm. Now to your more direct question about 500 rentals. Again, that's it. I would like to have 500 by 45. Theoretically, then I would like to have even more later on. I don't know if I want to leave those to my kids or not. I don't know. My wife and I haven't really discussed what our goals would be for that from that perspective, because one side of that coin is no, don't give them anything, for the same reason we discussed. I want them to work for whatever they have. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if I live to say even 75, what I think Caucasian male in the U.S. now, life expectancy is roughly 75 to 78, something like that. So presuming I fit that mold, just the average, if I live to say 75, my kids will be mid 40s to mid 50s at that time. So at that point, I don't know that they'll already be working, right? I mean, even the ones in their mid 40s presumably will have been working for roughly 20 years. Yeah. At that point, I don't know that I would care as much to just leave them all of it. Yeah. Hey, here's a gift, happy early retirement, but you're still gonna have to work hard on these too, because real estate's no joke. However, I will say this. My wife and I, like I said, we want to travel. there's a good chance we have to start selling off all these properties to pay for all the travel. So I've started conditioning my children already to understand that there may not be any money. You may not get anything from us when we die. We may have spent it all. So don't rely on us. You need to rely on yourselves. Of course, the only one who even remotely understands what I'm talking about is my 9-year-old. Mm-hmm. My 7-year-old just looks at me with blank stare, like, what are you talking about? What do I care? But it was kind of like my dad. He conditioned me from a very young age. He said, look, if you want to go to college, you're going to have to figure out a way to get scholarships because your mom and I are not going to have money to put you through college. So he told me from a very young age. It was never a surprise to me when I got to my senior year of college and I had to fill out all the FAFSA stuff, and then hope to get scholarships, which I did. It never surprised me then when my dad was like, yeah, we can't pay for this. I was like, I know. You've been telling me since I was 8 before I even understood really what that meant. My kids, the same thing. Now, would I like to leave them a legacy, a financial legacy? Yes, I would. Mm. My wife would too, but we've never discussed with all of our real estate, what would we do? Because frankly, I think for now, we're just presuming that we're going to end up having to sell it all to afford our chosen lifestyle when we're older of just traveling. Mm-hmm. And we don't travel extravagantly. I mean, we travel cheap. Up until I think we were supposed to go to the Czech Republic in 2020. COVID stopped that. So our last trip before that was we were in Athens, Greece for 2 days. And then we were on Santorini for a week. And then on our way to 2 days in Reykjavik, Iceland, we had a full day layover in Frankfurt, Germany. So kind of hit up a lot of that. Well, on our trip, I mean, a lot of it was hostels. I mean, we splurged for a nicer place on Santorini because of how beautiful it is. Yeah. But we didn't pick the view that everybody wants of the caldera, mm-hmm. and it's a ridiculous amount of money. We picked a nice Airbnb that faced the other side of the island. Mm. So it's still pretty. Yeah. But it was like a third of the price, So that's how we travel, and that's probably how we'll do it when we're older.
Yeah. We're the same way. We like deals.
Yeah, deals. I want to save money. I want to save money for the same experience because you want to do things that other people aren't doing. I want to get the same experience people are getting, but for less money, mm-hmm. So all that to say, when we talk legacies and real estate and whether there's going to be any to pass on for the kids, I hope so. I hope that we've done well enough with other investments and with just the income coming off the real estate that funds our lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And then I can turn over the real estate probably to all the kids. Yep. However, again, we're already telling them there may not be anything left for it. If we spend it, it was ours to spend. So, yeah.
How can people connect with you?
So I would say probably the best way is through my office. I don't tend to give out my mm-hmm. cell phone number or my personal email address too much. Definitely not my cell phone number, just because in my line of work, Joe Blow gets my cell phone number. He gives it to this guy down the street, and then John Doe over here gets arrested for DWI. And in the middle of the night, my cell phone's ringing for me to come bail a guy out of jail and to represent him in his DWI case. And I don't even do criminal defense. Mm-hmm. So I learned as a very young lawyer, don't give out my cell phone. So my office phone number is 417-358-4049, and that'll get you connected either to our Carthage office or our Nevada office. It's the same number to both. And then my email address is TLB, and that's Tango Lima Bravo, at CP, Charlie Peter, -law.com, TLB at CP-law.com. And frankly, even if you don't have anything that you need to hire me for from a legal perspective, if you just want to chat about real estate, as anybody who's been with me more than 20 minutes knows, I can talk about real estate all day. And frankly, it's to my detriment because then I don't end up charging anybody, and it's unfortunate. But those are probably the best two ways to get a hold of me. I would not say Facebook, mm-hmm. because I'm rarely on Facebook, but people keep messaging me on Facebook, and I have to apologize and say sorry for not responding sooner. I just don't often check Facebook.
Yep. So. And to be clear, what all do you guys practice? What do you like to practice?
Yeah, so my main areas are, no surprise, real estate and business. Those are my two, I would say, desired areas. But I do a lot of estate planning. I really enjoy it, but I do a lot of that, and I do a lot of probate work. I do some general civil litigation if it strikes my fancy. That was how I cut my teeth, and that was all I did for 3 years. I got pretty burnt out on it pretty fast, so I don't do a ton of that anymore, but I do a little bit. But that's me. My firm, we also do bankruptcy, adoption, family law, debt workouts, traffic tickets, stuff like that. I don't do those things, but we have attorneys in our firm who do.
Okay, cool. And then do you have a final message for our audience?
I do. And I had to write it down because no one ever has asked me like, what's your message for people? You know, I'm not an important enough person. No one asked me that. So when you asked it, I was like, I want to take this seriously. And so I would say God loves you and nothing else in this world matters if you don't believe that.
Man, amen.
God loves you. And he will always love you. Nothing you can do or not do or succeed at or fail at is going to change that. But you need to accept him. And I would say once you accept that and choose to follow God, everything else falls into place. And that does not mean you'll get everything you think you want. But if you accept the Lord, the Holy Spirit will start working on your soul to where, hopefully, as I was mentioning earlier, your desires in life begin to conform with God's desires for your life. And then lastly, there is no substitute for hard work and a constant desire to learn.
Man, that's amazing. That's a really powerful message.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for watching the Kurima Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.